Member Larson,
Present.
Member Corvington,
Present.
Member Collier, Member Jailing,
Present.
Member Bowman, Co-Chair Caldwell,
Present.
Member Hildreth, Member Alou, Member LeMay, Member Marshall,
Present.
Member Glowski,
Present.
Member Volmer, Member Becker,
Here.
Member Webster, Councilmember Ottenberg,
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Here.
and Co-Chair Fleischer.
Here.
Okay.
And do we want to do an approval of minutes from last time? Everyone get a chance to take a look at that.
I'll make the motion, we approve the minutes.
Thank you, Scott.
I could second that.
Ed seconds.
Are you doing
All
them
in favor?
both
sorry.
together? Doing them both together?
Yes. Is that okay? We'll do them both together. I forgot that we missed it last time with the quorum.
I'll revise my motion and say, motion to approve them both.
And I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor of that approval, say aye.
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 Any opposed? And all right, we're good. Thank you.
Do we know of public participation for tonight?
Chair, we did not receive any written comments to share with the task force. And other than Mr. Corvington as an attendee, but also as a panelist, there is no one else on the Zoom call. Thank you.
So then that takes us to next steps for task force members. So yeah, did everyone get a chance to look at that final draft and everything? And did we have any comments or anything regarding the final draft?
Chair, if I could just briefly.
Please, Joe.
At our last meeting, there was a discussion about how the information would be best portrayed. Throughout the process, we've always shown the organizations and the supporting information on an Excel spreadsheet. There was a request which was supported by the task force members to do a Word document. So tonight you have an Excel spreadsheet that reflects the organizations. You have a Word document that also reflects the organizations. And then there is a third Excel spreadsheet, or a second Excel spreadsheet, a third item. And that actually is the complete list. Kristen spent the better part of, I'd say, a month contacting those organizations where we didn't have information. And some weren't interested, some didn't return calls, others just really did not want to participate. And so the first Excel spreadsheet does not include those organizations that were incomplete, nor does the Word document. So that's just the explanation of what you have before you tonight for consideration. Thank you.
That's very helpful. Thank you. So basically, we're trying to vote on which format we like the best in regards to what will be accessible from the site, from the city website.
Yes, if there's a preference and it's a majority of the task force support it, then that's the direction we'll basically proceed. Thank you.
That's great. Does anybody have any comments or want to argue for one or the other in any way? Mr. Marshall.
I thought they both looked great. I was just curious, and this would be more of a technology question, would be, are there reasons that people might want it in a Word document versus in the Excel? I thought the Excel document was easy to look at and you could kind of go in that category, but there may be a need, and I don't know what that need would be, that people would want it in a Word document, and then whether or not you could make the Word document just as a PDF attachment to the Excel document. If somebody wanted that, they could click on it there. I don't know. I thought the Excel chart was great, and Kristen, that's a lot of work, and you did a great job on it.
I'll second that.
Ms. Dabo?
I was going to indicate that she also did a great job. That's fantastic. But both of these documents should be PDF documents to begin with. And I don't see what the problem would be to indicate chart format on one button and Word document. Everybody knows what Word is. Document type on another button, and then they can pick either one, or on the titles of both of these documents underneath whatever is going up on the website. Just my 2 cents. Keep it simple.
Yeah, I agree with both of you that having both options is nice. Mr. Glassy?
Thank you, Dan. Yeah, I think the only issue there might be with that is when updates are made, they need to be made in 2 places.
Yeah, that's a good point. Anybody else have any comments? Yes, Ed.
Dan made a good point. How will we handle updates? Will we say once every 6 months, or do you send it out to those organizations and say, we're checking this out over 6 months? If you have any changes, let us know, and send it back and kind of do it behind the scenes? It's a great question, because and the whole idea of trying to track people down, most of those will change every year. A lot of the contact stuff, I'm afraid.
Yeah, in talks with the city administrator today, we want to try and find a way to do that that's not city staff time. That's whether it be one of us or somebody else that's outsourced for that type of thing. But we don't want to put that burden on the city staff to maintain keeping it relevant. And then, does anyone have an opinion in regards to the list that has all the organizations in the list? It just says people that responded. My personal preference, and whatever you guys think, but my personal preference is the one that just has the people that responded would be the one to put up there. So if they're not responding, then they probably don't have any interest in having their information spread out to the community anyway.
Agree.
Agree. I do too.
Do you need a motion to that effect?
Yeah, I think we need a motion on which one we want to go with, but have we also decided then as a consensus, more or less, that we like having both of them up there, knowing though what Mr. Klowski said, that whoever takes this on is going to have to update 2 forms when they update that stuff? Does anybody else have any comments on that?
One quick question. I'm sorry, the dogs were coming up. I had to.
Yeah, I get it.
I guess my question is, we've got community volunteers that have signed up for, any task we might provide. Is there a member off of that volunteer list that we could task with making contact with each of these organizations 6 months from now, to make sure all of the data is still accurate? I don't see any reason we couldn't do that. And then myself, any of the council members, anybody I think on this committee, both know Word or Excel. And now that Kristen's put together a great framework for it all, maybe we could get a volunteer from the committee to update the data on a regular basis.
Who organizes the gathering of the volunteers to do that? Is that going to then fall on staff to get that going, or would that be something that you, myself, Scott, can access and get a hold of somebody off that list?
I don't know.
I think you're going to need at least, I mean, the question is, how do you decide who's the authority, right, for publishing?
Mhm,
I
mhm.
think that's the hard part. Probably not updating. It's probably not the hard part. It's
It's the
trying to kind of keep
authoritative.
track of, yeah.
Mhm. Do we put it up and just see how many hits it gets over the next 6 months? How many people use it, and then determine whether or not it's a viable document? Not that I want to negate all the work that's gone into it thus far.
Mr. Rottenberg?
So to Councilmember Dodwell's point, putting it up for 6 months, is there some way we can promote this list then through the community? I know we may have discussed this before. Is this something that can be mentioned in an upcoming issue of the Wildwood Gazette? I wonder if we can get a news release over to the West News magazine, you know, something like that.
Mr. Chair, I would suggest that certainly that's a role the city could play. Once the host is determined and the documents available, we can certainly promote it.
Is city looking for us to host this outside of the city's website?
I think Mr. Flasher had a conversation with Mr. Cross today, so I'll defer to him.
Yeah, so Steve said that we could put something on the website, like a link to it on the website. And in theory, the city could host it, but he doesn't want the city to manage it. So somebody else would have to manage it instead of the city. But he said that at the time, you know, there was worries of like legal stuff there. At this point, we don't think that that's going to be a concern. And if it becomes a concern, then we can take it down and tackle what that looks like from that point on.
So Dan, are you thinking from I'm just thinking about how who maintains, who can update this ongoing? You thinking you and Kristen would be the arbiters of who can maintain it, that kind of thing? And then through like an email chat, how are you just trying to think about what is the process?
Yeah, that's the part I don't know. I don't know if someone wants to like step up and take that role on themselves. I don't think you want one person, because you know what I mean. I think you probably want a 2 or 3 people, and then you'd have maybe 2 people that can change who the other people are, so that evolves over time. If you want it to live on, right? So that's just my thought. Mr. Glowski?
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, I would agree with Brian. Maybe once this task force completes its role and is disbanded, then you know, the mayor could possibly appoint a smaller commission or task force, if you will, that has responsibility for maintaining the list. And as part of that, I would suggest whichever format we use, that at the bottom we include a note that says bring any errors or incomplete or incorrect information to the attention of this to be named committee. And then also a statement that says, you know, if your organization would like to be added to this list, please contact the committee.
Probably be good to set up like a mailbox on Gmail or something like that for the community. Then you could have different people monitor the box. That way you don't have personal people's emails out there that are, you know, get that, right?
Yeah.
We have like a last updated on blah, 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 so that people will know that it's
Right.
been so much time since it's been updated.
Because I'm guessing as people use it, if they call a number and it's disconnected, they will bring it to our attention.
Yeah.
Mr. Marshall?
Should it maybe on the bottom of one of the documents or wherever that link is, would probably be a good place to put a waiver that the city is not responsible for the information, that it was submitted by
Mhm.
these organizations, so that they just one more step of kind of keeping at arm's length away from the city controlling it. So I'm sure there's a pretty simple way that waiver could be added. The other thing I think is, if you were going to do the email, which I think is a great idea, you might want to have it kind of addressed to updates, and so that you don't have a dozen other organizations who said, hey, we think we'd like to know to be part of this or whatever, because we spent a lot of time narrowing it down. So you don't want another 15 or 20 organizations that don't meet the guideline come in and just jump on without having to do that. So maybe just how you address it, because somebody who really wants to know about it, they'll reach out and talk to somebody at the city, I'm sure. But that just a thought of the waiver.
Mr. Attenberg?
Thank you. Expanding on Councilmember Marshall, sorry about that. Mr. Marshall's point, should we also in that disclaimer mention that the information is subject to change without notice? And then also to expand on Mr. Glowski's point, should we have a more formalized procedure for updating? In other words, how often do we update the document? Do we do it on a quarterly basis? Do we do it on an ongoing basis? And then once the document is updated, does it need to be reviewed by this committee, by some future committee as may be named by the mayor prior to it being published? I'm just thinking we probably need to formalize some of our procedures for updating, just so that everybody's on the same page.
Just taking notes. Thank you.
So to get a motion on the table, does someone want to, I guess, first motion that we go with the responding folks instead of the overall thing? We'll get that part taken care of, and then we can move on to the next topic. Does that sound good?
Motion made.
Okay, Katie makes motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Scott seconds. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, great. So we're going to go with the one of people that responded. That's one thing down. So I guess the next question is, we'll take another motion here, hopefully, and get this ball continuing to roll. And we can have discussion on this too, as far as whether or not we're updating both of those and putting both links on the site, or if we are just using one or the other. Does anyone make a motion either way that we can kind of?
I'll make a motion. We put both on site.
Okay.
Second.
Scott seconds that one.
I would suggest that maybe that those that maybe intend to volunteer to maintain it have a more weighted opinion about this, given that you have to maintain 2 documents versus 1. And if they're okay with that, then I think that would weigh heavily on my vote.
Yeah, that's fair. So we don't really know who's going to be that person, I guess, at this point. I mean,
Well,
in my mind,
I can withdraw. I can withdraw, and we can make a decision on which document we want up there. Take a vote on that.
okay. There's the second one to withdraw as well, Scott, while we discuss. Okay, so now we can, discussions opened up again. Mr. Glowski?
Thank you, Dan. I had asked for the Word document only because the first spreadsheet that we had was pretty cumbersome. I think as Kristen has revised it here, and I would agree with Mr. Marshall that it's it reads very well. My only suggestion, if we go with this, well, I guess 2 suggestions. One would be that the title be changed to be something more along the lines of what's in the Word document. List of service organizations available to Wildwood residents instead of the Community Outreach Task Force organization list. And And then I
Good
think it can
point.
be further simplified by combining the last 4 columns under a single heading that says contact information. I don't know, or at a minimum, eliminate or combine the address and the zip code columns. And if those changes are made, I'd be happy with the Excel.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm looking at here and I agree with you in the zip code part. That would just make it a little less columns and things like that to maintain. So Joe, what all do we need to like vote on, or is some of the stuff just, okay, we'll do that and we'll move on?
Mr. Chair, I would suggest a motion to approve the Excel spreadsheet with the following changes. The title be modified to reflect what's on the Word document, and the combination of at least the last 4 columns into 2 columns or less.
I have one additional suggestion, and that is that the current PDFs do not have clickable links. So
Mhm.
you can't click on them. And I think that's a significant hindrance to getting the additional information. It is possible to publish them in a way that those links are clickable. I think that's important.
Mhm.
Mr. Larson will make sure that happens. We'll make those links live.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah, the city should have the tools to do that. And then one last little suggestion is where we have things that have small content in them, perhaps making those the narrower columns and the ones with lots of words on them, the columns with lots of text in them, maybe expanding those a little bit wider so that we have the ability to shorten the form maybe a little bit, or the format on that Excel spreadsheet. That's my only thought. And if you want to email it to me, Kristen, I'll play around with it and send a copy back to you. That's no problem.
So does anybody have any reservations or anything against anything that anyone else has suggested here, or are we all happy with the suggestions that other members made? Great. So with that in mind, does anyone want to make a motion that we approve the Excel only format as opposed to the double click?
I'll do
So
it.
moved.
Mr.
I'll
Ottenberg. Okay, and Katie makes second. So all in favor of just going with the Excel, moving forward with the changes that were all just suggested there, say aye, please.
I
Aye.
Anybody opposed to that? And any abstain? Okay, so we'll move forward with that. We're cooking here now. Mr. Gosky, yeah.
Thank you, Dan. So just one additional clarification in addition to the changes that Joe mentioned. I assume we're including also the disclaimer that Ed mentioned, and yeah, okay, very good. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Those were great suggestions, and we'll have them as notes at the bottom of the table.
So that appears to take us to the hosting of everything. And we kind of discussed that the city can host but not manage. So we can put some sort of a link on the city website that people can access this stuff, and we can promote it through the city. I mean, even Steve Cross said that was fine, not taking hours, like e-newsletters and things like that. But then we kind of need, do we need to figure out who the person is that's managing that, or is that something that we can just kind of figure out, not necessarily this group on a later date, but on a later date through the city? Can we like defer this back to the city in some way for that portion of it? I don't know what the process is for that stuff. Yes, Katie.
Do we have any volunteers who would be willing to take on that role in this current committee? Oh, they're just jumping, aren't they?
Yep, I would like to participate, but I do have limited Excel spreadsheet skills. So depending on who else is involved in the, I think someone had suggested a 2 or 3 member committee or task force to maintain it. I'd be willing to participate.
And from like a
Thank you.
council member perspective, I'm happy to do that with Dan, at least until we find somebody else that's willing to do it. But I'm happy to take on that burden so that this comes to a close for all of us here.
Thank you. I think between the two of you, should be able to get things started and working with the city. Then you can put together, it'll give both of you a better understanding of what the required skill set might be, what time it's going to take each time that there might have to be a change. And then as you're soliciting volunteers, we may be able to get some more quickly. And I'll put on my look for a volunteer to-do list. So
I will volunteer to answer Excel questions. So if that helps, Dan, that I'll, you know, if you have problems with Excel, and unfortunately have lots of experience with Excel.
That's great, because I'm like Mr. Glassky. I'm not much of much with the computer at all.
I think honestly, the biggest thing honestly you run into is just how to make it look pretty, maybe how to get the links to work. That's probably about it. It shouldn't be too hard. So I can help you with that part.
Thank you.
Okay, so we got that part figured out. Do we need to vote on that, Joe, or is everybody else like, great? We do need to vote on it. Okay, so is everybody, someone want to make a motion saying that they're comfortable with myself, Mr. Glowski, and Mr. Larson managing this thing for the time being?
So moved.
All right. All right, Mr. Rottenberg and Mr. Larson, I guess who I heard there. All in favor, give us a big aye.
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 Anybody opposed? And if you're opposed, you're going to take it on yourself.
Wait. Can I oppose now? No, I'm
Yeah.
kidding.
Any abstain? Okay, we got that piece figured out.
Okay, I'm just going down the agenda here. Are we at the point of other considerations? Have we covered all the main?
Well, Madam Chair, if I could, with your permission, the next steps in the process will be to present the final draft, so to speak, of the Excel spreadsheet to City Council. City Council enabled this ad hoc task force, and with your votes tonight, we do have a final product to present to them. I'm not quite sure what that meeting date will be, but it should be no later than February 28th.
Well, thank you for clarifying.
Great, that's fantastic. And I know at least 3 of us, and Ed's usually there too, so probably 4 of us will be there to kind of facilitate any questions that might pop up. And well.
Is there anything else that we should be considering with this? Mr. Marshall?
I don't think there needs to be a motion made. That original spreadsheet would just be archived with the regular stuff the city would maintain anyway. So I think it'll be there if anybody ever comes back and says, where are those 70 some different things? So I don't think we need to do anything special, just kind of let them rest where they are.
Mr. Ottenberg?
Should there be at the bottom of the spreadsheet something along the lines of a sentence that says, if you have any questions about the above information, please contact, along with a name and a phone number? Or making
That's another avenue for doing the marketing. Ideally, everybody on there has a way to contact the organizations. But I think that would just get a really confusing as people come in, blame us, council and the department for not following up with a commitment they had or something like that. I think the more you can keep it as just a referral, that's just my thoughts. So.
Councilmember Dowell.
I would concur with that as well. I don't think we need to make anybody responsible. This is just information for our community. And I think the task of keeping it up to date is enough manpower expenditure.
All right, so I guess my question is real quick, who do they contact if some other organization wants to be a part of this or something like that? Like, how do we, what's the contact information? Would they reach out to the city, which then is going against what Steve was hoping, where it doesn't fall on the city staff stuff? I mean, I'm not anticipating it being like calls 24/7 or anything, but still.
Well, if you limit it to this mailbox that we're talking about and not a personal, like, phone number or that kind of thing, it's easy enough to ignore. I mean, I suppose you could always, fine tune the message depending on how much feedback you get in the mailbox, right? But if you insulate yourself that way, I think it maybe won't be overwhelming.
Michelle?
They'll have a way to track it down if they want to. I just wouldn't make it so inviting to people who wouldn't know. If somebody really wants to know, they'll reach out and figure out how to get on there and get it referred back through. But I just wouldn't make it too easy for them to get to it.
And Mr. Chair and Madam Chair, my thought was, following Mr. Larson's logic, is that any communication would go through that email address. And the email would then be dispersed to whoever's maintaining the site. That way, we can see if it's something we can do or can't do, but at least we'll keep track of what's coming and going.
Any other thoughts or comments? Oh, I'm sorry, Dan, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to ask the exact same thing. So no worries. Well, if nothing else, this has been a really great opportunity to get to meet some other members of the community here. I know, I met Maura through this and we've talked a handful of times. So it was nice to make a little bit of friendships and stuff like that through this. So anyway, if nobody has anything else, if someone wants to make a motion to adjourn for a final time, I will happily accept that motion.
I will accept
that motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Not all at once now, please. All right. I got Mr. Larson making the motion, Mr. Ottenberg seconding. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? More opposed. Okay, so I'm just kidding. All right, and then no abstention. Well, thanks so much, everybody. It was nice meeting you, and hopefully we'll see you around in the community as well.
Thank
Will
you,
you guys
co-chairs
tell us-
Caldwell and Flasher, for your efforts.
Yeah.
Will you guys
Yeah.
tell us what meeting it will be? Will you post that we'll know what meeting that it will be at so we know?
Just Jelling, you'll get the copy of the summary report with the attached Excel spreadsheet. And so you'll know when the meeting is and what's being presented.
Okay.
Great. Thanks so much, everyone.
guys.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Have a good evening, everyone.
You
Thanks,
too.
guys. Good night.
Good night.